Last night, the Los Angeles Lakers got eliminated in the first round by the Phoenix Suns. It's the first time in LeBron James' entire career that he's lost in the first round, and because the Lakers lost, that means my bracket is completely busted. I don't know about you guys, but I had the Lakers winning the championship again this season, but they faced a really good team in the Phoenix Suns, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about what went right for the Suns in this series and what went wrong for the Los Angeles Lakers, just like I did last video, kind of analyzing the Miami Heat versus Milwaukee Bucks series, and it's really amazing how much of a make or miss league it is, not only for the players, but for the fans as well. Like I mentioned in my last video, in 2019, I ranked in the 83rd percentile in the online bracket challenge and predicted the champion. In 2020, I ranked in the 90th percentile in the bracket challenge and ranked in the 90th percentile, and this year, the two teams that I had making the finals get eliminated in the first round. Yeah, so I definitely flopped on the bracket challenge this year. But anyway, like I mentioned, I'm going to be doing a big analysis of the series in this video. I'm going to go through 5 things that went right for the Phoenix Suns and wrong for the Lakers, just like I did last video with the Heat and Bucks series. So let's get right into it. Now, before we do, if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any new videos. And make sure, I've given this shout out a ton, but follow me on Instagram at DanielDelari.yt. I'm posting tons of extra content about the playoffs, my reactions and analysis of the playoffs, and my story here. So make sure you go follow me on there as well. With that being said, let's get into it. So the first thing that obviously really stands out of something that went wrong for the Lakers in the series and made it a lot easier on the Phoenix Suns was how Anthony Davis got injured. Anthony Davis got injured right at the end of the first half in Game 4, and it's obvious that he's still one of the best players in the NBA when he's fully healthy, and he was looking like himself in the first few games of that series, but then he suffered a groin injury and had to miss the rest of the series. And in Game 6 last night, he tried to play through the first quarter and lasted about 5 minutes before he had to leave the game again. He was very clearly playing injured, and his impact on the floor has just been amazing for the Lakers. And when he's not on the floor, obviously they still have LeBron, but they're just not the same team. This series, when the Lakers had AD on the floor for the first 3.5 games, they outscored the Phoenix Suns 358 to 347, and then in the last 2.5 games without Anthony Davis, the Suns outscored them 277 to 227. So without AD, they outscored the Lakers by 50 points. And we know that AD's impact on both ends is incredible. I mean, the Lakers' defense is just simply not the same without him. AD's incredibly versatile. For sometimes when he's playing as their center, he's definitely their defensive anchor, an amazing rim protector, and very good in the pick and roll of defending the pick and roll, dropping and contesting shots, especially when he switched on to guards. And even when he was switching on guys like Devin Booker, he was doing a really good job in this series of guarding him and Chris Paul when he switched down to the perimeter on them. He's one of the most versatile defenders in the NBA, and the Lakers defense just simply wasn't the same without him. And then on offense, we know that the Lakers obviously always go to AD a lot when he's in the post. He can do that little turnaround jumper, score around the rim a lot, especially when he's playing center. He does a great job of operating in the post and scoring down low, and sometimes he can space the floor as well and knock down the three. So on both ends, he's just an incredibly impactful player, and the Lakers completely missed him, and like I mentioned, got outscored by 50 in this series when AD was not on the floor. The next thing I'm going to be talking about, another thing that really went wrong for the Lakers here, is how they could not hit a single 3 in this series. I mean, LeBron obviously isn't known as a 3-point shooter, and he was the only one that was consistently knocking down 3s. And his role players around him, especially guys like Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Kuzma, Caruso, and all these guys that are trying to be floor spacers and stretch the floor and knock down 3s for LeBron when he's facilitating, going to the rim, driving and kicking it out to them. They did a horrible job this season, and not even close to what they did last season. Last season in the playoffs, the Lakers were a decent shooting team, and we know that that's mainly their weakness as a team, is their 3-point shooting, but this year it was just absolutely horrendous. And also a guy like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, one of those guys I forgot to mention, he was also not very consistent this season with knocking down 3s, and overall as a team throughout this series, the Lakers only shot 30% from 3 as a team. Now you might think, okay, well they can just rely on inside scoring, but as they started to miss more and more 3s, you could see that the Suns defense was crowding the paint more more and more and shrinking the floor. And now because of this was the main reason that LeBron James could not operate in the paint like he usually does in this series. I know he wasn't being as aggressive and he's probably not the best player in the league anymore, but let me just back up LeBron for a second. There's no way he could score in the paint when he's facing like triple teams and quadruple teams in the paint there. It's not his fault that he can't score around the rim when he's facing that. It's the shooter's fault that literally can't hit a single open three, and because of that the paint's now clogged for LeBron. And I know there's been tons of LeBron hate, and I might even make a whole separate video on it, just why people should stop hating on LeBron right now, because people are saying that this was like a legacy defining moment for him when he's 36 years old. All of this is bonus right now for LeBron. And yeah, I'm gonna take a minute here just to back up LeBron, because I mean, unfortunately, it always has to be about the GOAT debate with Michael Jordan. And you guys know my hot take on that if you watch the channel, but just to put it in perspective, Michael Jordan was not in the league when he was 36 years old, so why should we criticize LeBron for losing in the first round for the first time in 17 years when he's 36 years old, an age where Michael Jordan was retired at that time? But anyway, most of the reason that LeBron couldn't operate in the paint because it was so clogged, his teammates couldn't knock down a single three, and the floor was just not stretched at all for the Lakers. They had horrible spacing, and the Suns were really able to crowd the paint and succeed on defense because of this. Now, speaking about the Suns defense, that's what I'm going to be talking about next, and just how overall as a team they played incredible defense. So first of all, like I mentioned, they played very smart defense when it comes to shrinking the floor. I mean, the Lakers just couldn't hit a three, so the Suns just decided to leave them open and just really focus on crowding that paint, and because of this they were able to shut down LeBron a lot better than other teams have in the past. And we look at also how they were able to recover out to shooters to contest a lot, because if you have some of the guys on the Lakers wide open for three, eventually they're going to knock down a few. But the Suns were playing amazing defense. It kind of reminded me of the defensive style that the Raptors, my Toronto Raptors, played with last year in 2020, where they would constantly be helping off of the wings, crowding the paint, shrinking the floor a ton, and then desperately recover out to shooters and hold teams to an under average 3-point percentage. And that's exactly what the Suns did in this series. They executed their defensive plan to perfection, shut down LeBron, caught a bit of a break because AD was out, but they were able to crowd the paint a lot and recover out to shooters. Another thing is just the personnel in this team is just amazing. It's such a well-built defensive team. I mean, you've got Chris Paul, who obviously isn't the same defensively right now, but he's still a pretty good perimeter defender. You've got great on-ball defenders, guys like Mikal Bridges, who guarded LeBron a lot this series, guys like Jay Crowder, and both of these guys were very good at defending the post, had amazing physicality, never allowed guys like LeBron and Anthony Davis when he was healthy to easily post up, and they did a very good job of defending one-on-one there. And also their defensive anchor in DeAndre Ayton. I mean, he was just incredible this series. I'm going to be talking about his offensive play a little bit later on as well, but defensively he was amazing. He was the defensive anchor for this team, did a great job on rotations, help, guarding the rim, and guarding the pick and roll. And overall this team was just so well built defensively, and they did an amazing job. When I look at their personnel, such a well-built defensive team. As I mentioned, they had a very good plan with shrinking the floor and recovering out to shooters, and overall they held the Lakers to 97.5 points per game in this series, which in today's NBA is absolutely insane. Think about how rare it is to see a team score under 100 points in a game right now, and the Suns held the Lakers to that for an average throughout the entire series. They had an amazing defensive series, and because of how good their defense is, I might see them as favorites moving on in the Western Conference. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is how Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton were absolutely dominating offensively this series, and they really had to step up, especially Booker, because it's no secret that at times throughout the series, Chris Paul was not 100% healthy. He's the main leader for this team, but both of these guys really had to step up. And let's start with Devin Booker. I mean, last night in Game 6, he absolutely went off. 47 points on 15 for 22 shooting and 8 of 10 from 3, which is absolutely insane, especially for his play style. I mean, he was just completely dominating everyone out there, and there was no matchup for him. And throughout the entire series, he averaged 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists on a ridiculous 49% from the field, 43% from 3, and 94% from the line on 63% true shooting. As I mentioned, the Lakers really had no matchup for him, especially once AD got injured because he was actually a pretty good matchup for Devin Booker, but ever since he was out, they really didn't have a good matchup for him, especially on the perimeter. I mean, Dennis Schroeder, KCP, Kyle Kuzma, even LeBron when he was switching on to him sometimes or started guarding him at the start on the perimeter. None of these matchups really worked on Devin Booker, and he was absolutely dominant. And the fact that he's doing this in the playoffs really gives him a case to be a top 15 player in the NBA. He was absolutely insane this series, and he's going to be the main scorer for this team going forward in not only this playoff run, but their entire future. And then also DeAndre Ayton was just incredible this series. He's obviously one of the rare traditional big men in the series. And I talked about how good he was defensively, but also offensively, putting up 16 points per game in this series on a ridiculous 80% shooting and 78% true shooting, which just led the entire playoffs. And obviously he's really efficient because he's playing down low the entire time, but he was just straight up dominating down there. Again, the Lakers had no answer for him. Even though they have Andre Drummond down low, he wasn't really able to guard DeAndre Ayton one-on-one when he was either playing in the post or even just rebounding down there. I mean, Ayton's effort offensively was just amazing this series, and how he would always go out there and get loose balls and rebounds. And there was, especially in game 1 in this series, he just straight up outplayed Anthony Davis, which was absolutely insane. And a lot of the times he outplayed Drummond as well. And I was just so impressed with his overall effort this series and how he was just able to dominate and play his role so well. So both Booker and Ayton really stepped up, and this was a huge factor in why the Phoenix Suns were able to beat the Lakers. The last thing I'm going to be talking about is how the Phoenix Suns were able to get out in transition a ton this series. I always find the team that gets out in transition is often going to win a lot more. It's so much easier to operate as an offense if you allow your defense to lead to your offense, and that's exactly what the Suns did in this series. They knew that the Lakers' defense is still really dominant, and even though they really didn't have a matchup for Devin Booker, or even when they put like CP3 and DeAndre Ayton in the pick and roll, it worked really well, but they still knew that if they were just going to play straight up with the Lakers, they weren't going to succeed as much if they were to really get out in transition. And they were a really good transition team overall for this entire season. Well, of course you are going to be when you're led by Chris Paul, one of the best, if not the best playmaker in the NBA. But in this series specifically, and specifically in those last 2 games, the Suns really allowed their defense to lead the offense. Throughout the playoffs, they ranked 2nd in the league in the playoffs in points per possession in transition with 1.33, ranked 5th in points per game in transition with 20.8, and ranked 4th in field goal percentage with a 59.5% field goal percentage in transition. And all of these stats don't seem that high up when it comes to the entire playoffs, but you could definitely see when you watch them play, they were really effective when they got out in transition, and they rank higher than the Lakers in all of these stats. And I think if the Lakers tried to get out in transition a little bit more, they could have had a better successful series against the Suns here, but the Suns were the more aggressive team. They got out in transition a lot more. It was pretty easy too, because they were getting a lot of steals off of the Lakers' careless turnovers from even LeBron and guys like Dennis Schroeder a lot as well, and they were able to just get out in transition a lot and succeed because of this as an overall offense. Before I end off this video, I'm going to do exactly what I did with last video and give another take on what my finals matchup is going to be. As I mentioned, I now have the Milwaukee Bucks coming out of the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to have the Phoenix Suns coming out of the Western Conference. They're such an overall well-built team. Their offense is amazing. I don't really see anyone that can guard Devin Booker one-on-one right now with the way that he's playing, especially on the Denver Nuggets, who's their next matchup. And their defense is so well-built, and I go as far to say that they have the best remaining defense out of all the teams remaining in the NBA playoffs right now. And this team is just so well-built. They have their leader in Chris Paul. If he can get healthy, I definitely see them as the favorites. As I mentioned, Booker and Ayton are playing the best of their careers right now, and this team is just so well prepared for the playoffs, and I think they're going to make the finals now. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. That's why I think the Phoenix Suns were able to beat the Los Angeles Lakers in this series. Those 5 main reasons I discussed. Overall, the Suns are an extremely well-built team. I see them as the favorites coming out of the West and maybe even winning the entire NBA championship. I think a Suns versus Bucks finals would be amazing to watch, despite how we don't have the big guns like LeBron and Curry left in the league right now. But it would still be an amazing series to watch. And overall, a few main messages Wizards does this video, first of all, to stop hating on LeBron James. He's 36 years old, everything he's doing right now is extra, and he had a very tough series because he was constantly crowded in the paint, and his team couldn't hit any shots. I might even make a separate video on this because I'm really passionate about how many haters LeBron has and how it's just ridiculous that he gets all this hate. But overall, the Suns were the better team in this series. It was very well deserved, and again, I was wrong about the Lakers here. Thank you all for watching this video. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you all next video.